Ricky Flex, this is one of the most anticipated movies of 2023. It got delayed, right? 2023 had so many prospects, right? It already was a successful, somewhat movie year at the box office. We missed out on the Bike Riders, gets pushed to a summer release, 2024. What were your expectations going in? We know you're an Austin Butler guy, but what else can you tell us?
like like Jodie Comer, probably my favorite young actress working today too.
You
Um,
planted that flag. You planted that one. You keep saying that.
Jeff Nichols, a guy I like. Mud. He's done a lot of great work prior, a lot more niche, quieter, low budget movies, and like nothing like he doesn't do any like big box office blockbuster type of movies. He focuses on specific, like very sentimental type of stories. And here, like I was expecting like a Mud, basically, like something that's just gonna knock my socks off. With a Max McConaughey at that time in 2012, like it's right before the McConaissance, and like Tom Hardy, someone that has that in his has a prestige quality in his bag, high ceiling, but he's been doing Venom, and he did Capone with was it Josh Trank or whoever. So I had high expectations with the young stars, of course, and a huge supporting cast: Michael Shannon, Norman Reedus, Boyd Holbrook, and more, whatever. So my expectations were sky high for this, and also you just throw on top. It's like Dune 2 just came out. Austin Butler's on top of the world, and it's also he's trying to do a James Dean. You see the trailer. He's on a motorcycle. So cool. So it's just like it had all the pieces of the anticipation and expectation levels from a critical point of view, and also just from the lore and real like today, like in the real world, had the lore of an attraction from the big stars, the topic, and also just the anticipation levels.
Yeah, this movie had everything in terms of anticipation. It had a sweet trailer. It's got movie stars looking really cool. It's got an aging like movie superstar with Tom Hardy that we haven't seen in a while that we're excited to see again. We got Austin Butler. We're talking about, is this the year of Austin Butler between Dune 2, Masters of the Air, and now Bike Riders, and the movie star of all movie star roles that you're going to see this year? Jodie Comer in that same category as Austin Butler, just on the female side. So exciting. You see the trailer, you hear the different accents. Then you talk about the exciting cast, the supporting cast of this movie. Just it had all the ingredients. And Jeff Nichols is like a respected director, but does he have the best filmography? Will this like catapult him to a different level? All right, catapult him to a more like a level that will put him in a higher like elite level of directors. That's what I was like. My anticipation was sky high for this movie. Ricky Flicks, did it live up to your high expectations?
It didn't. It didn't. I think this movie's fine. It was a good watch. It looked awesome. The look of this movie is awesome. It has the aura. It takes on this golden era of the motorcycle clubs and gangs and whatnot. And it has the actors to really showcase that. And they're riding the motorcycles. The look, like actually, like the actual, like what from the bikes that are actually like that era's bikes, or the jackets, the costume design, just everything. I had all the aesthetic pieces, and I think maybe that's where they focus too much on it and not much on the story. That's not as much time as they should have on the story.
Yeah, so we'll jump to flaws soon enough. I think for me, it's the plot. It's the story of this movie. I didn't really know what it wanted to be, but I want to say the first act of this movie, where you didn't really care about the plot, it kicked ass. It was Goodfellas on bikes. Even from the first freeze frame that you got when Austin Butler's getting hit over the head with a shovel, right? When it pauses right before he gets hit in the head, and then you had that narration going from Jodie Comer's character with the unique accent, like her kind of channeling a Karen Hill type character. I'm like, damn, this is awesome. Great 60s soundtrack that's kicking in. I was surprised by like the homage to Goodfellas because I didn't sense that whatsoever in the trailer. I was kind of thrown off with it. I was expecting something a little bit more original. Um, Also, I think we should talk about some of the actors here because I think it's interesting because I don't even know if there was like a true lead of this movie. It was three ways. I wanted to ask you get Jodie Comer, who's piloting, steering the ship on this story. She's narrating through it all, right? Being interviewed by Mike Feist. It's a movie that's based on a photographic book of this Vandals gang, right? And Jodie Comer is playing this character who's walking us through the story. She's doing this like accent that gives me a little bit of Frances McDormand, Fargo vibes a little bit, just a little more manlier, to be honest. Shockingly, I didn't even know that was possible. But and then you have Tom Hardy here and Austin Butler. Tom Hardy making a choice with his accent as well, and then Austin Butler, like we said before, just looking like a pure movie star. But I like screen time wise, Ricky Flicks, I feel like it was very evenly distributed. I was shocked to see this much Tom Hardy in this goddamn movie. I thought he would be playing third fiddle to the younger superstars. No?
I think he was third fiddle. But obviously something happens in the movie, non-spoilers, where he gets more screen time. And then by the last act, it's like, oh, he is like kind of one of the main guys, I guess. But I think I think Jodie Comer, like when they did the credits, they did Jodie Comer and Austin Butler at the same time as the top billing. And then it was like, and Tom Hardy on the next screen. So they're trying to say Jodie Comer and Austin Butler, the two leads of this movie, which they were. But for me, I thought this was the Jodie Comer show. Just because of the approach of this movie with the narration in the interview that she does that's throughout this movie, everything kind of ran through her. Even though the movie's not really about her. Like it is, but like it isn't. You know, and Austin Butler, even before what happens, again, no spoilers, before that, it's like we needed him on the screen more, in my opinion. Because that was the only time I was actually interested really in the movie. He just captures our attention. And also just not just by his looks, it's not just because of that, but also just the Benny character. And he had the aura, like I talked about at the top. He had that for this movie. I think Tom Hardy, the more I thought about it, the more I liked his performance. Walking out, I was questioning it. Now I actually like it. And Jodie Comer I thought was good, but like just the approach that Jeff Nichols took with this movie and the plot and how the actual execution of the telling of this story, I just thought was bizarre. I was nervous about it when I saw it in the trailer with the interview with Mike Feiss, and now it's just cemented it for me or sealed it for me that I just really didn't like it, the approach.
Okay. So starting off with Jodie Comer, like she really is like Karen Hill. Like it's a very similar type of like at least description of the character where it's like someone that's pure and innocent that is entering this world and falling in love with someone that is like the heir to like a gang or a group of dangerous people. Like it's spot on. And like just like the callbacks, like even filming wise to like Goodfellas, where it's like you have the introduction of the supporting cast, you have the freeze frames, you got like in the middle of the frame, you got Michael Shannon, you got Boyd Holbrook almost posing for the camera, just like you're introducing the entire like gang in Goodfellas. Like it just to me was so reminiscent. But the accent, I didn't mind it. You know, that was a big question mark for everybody that I think was going to see this movie. Jodie Comer like is such a fragile looking person to put on this stern type of accent. Can she like pull it off? She doesn't have a physically imposing type of presence on screen. But I think it worked. The only thing is when she's doing like a really unique accent, and then Tom Hardy is just like in the next scene or in the same frame doing another like ambitious accent, it kind of took me out of it. You know, I feel like one could not be as ambitious because Tom Hardy, I think the more I thought about it, it worked too, because his accent, Chicago based, but also I liked it because it's about this guy. The character's so interesting. It's a guy who's kind of a phony motorcycle gang leader. He has a family at home. He's a truck driver. He's got two little girls, daughters at home. And then he's like playing make believe, right? Trying to be Marlon Brando and the Lost Ones, you know? So that's where it's like, oh, the accent kind of works because like he's putting on a performance, you know?
Totally agree.
And then Jodie Comer is telling the story, and I'm not getting annoyed by it. But when they're both talking, I'm like, Austin Butler's just standing there stoic and just being James Dean. I guess it kind of worked, but it took me out of it at the same time. Does that make sense?
It threw me off. The Tom Hardy one, I liked it the entire way. I thought it was just unique enough, but not so much where it threw me off, like maybe in other Tom Hardy movies. Not for me, but for other people. But Jodie Comer's, so she's from England. So first off, impressive.
Wow.
And apparently, like Jeff Nichols was saying that this is like identical to the real life, Kathy, right? Real life Kathy. So okay, fine. But that's like the thing with movies. This is a fictional story. This movie is based off of a picture book. And like this guy just telling him through his experience with the gang taking their pictures what it was kind of like, and then Jeff Nichols created this story. You know what you could do? You could change the accent a little bit if you want. I know it's not as fun, but when you have all these different accents going on, and especially one with the narrator, it throws me off. It does. So that's another. I did like this movie, but like I know in this review so far, I haven't come out. I'm coming out kind of hot against it, but it just threw me off throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, I literally was like in that rant I had. I almost talked myself into liking it, you know, because like they're both like good performances. Like it's great to see Tom Hardy back, you know, like
Yes.
you know, if Tom Hardy's in this type of movie, like he's gonna be putting on some type of accent. It's freaking Tom Hardy.
Like
He's not covering his face. He's doing an accent, you know.
like the scene at the bar in the trailer when he's like, burn it down, and then
So good, dude. So
and then
good.
but like that was like obviously like that's like the part that you think of, and that's the trailer snippet that you take out, right, clip. But after that, when they're standing in the street watching the bar burn down, and the cops and firefighters are just looking at him, at the gang, and Tom Hardy's just like at the lead, and they're like, we should probably go, and he goes, no, we don't have to. Like
Okay.
I was like, that's Tom Hardy. That's Tom Hardy.
Boss,
And
dude. He was a boss in this. He was,
dude, like,
but like it's a complex character. He had the most complex character in this movie by like a wide margin, you know.
dude, yeah, family. He never was home.
And they only show it right before that moment in like the third act. They only like pan back because like the bikers are his family. He wants to make that his newfound family. He probably hates his life at home. You know, this whole gang is like a getaway for him. And like you see him at the beginning of this movie watching The Lost Ones and seeing Marlon Brando and saying, I want to be like that guy. And when he sees Marlon Brando there and starts this gang, he then sees Benny, played by Austin Butler, and he's like, I want that. I want to be that guy. He idolizes Austin Butler and the carefree lifestyle he has, and how cool he actually looks, Ricky Flex. And I also wanted to say, Ricky, what was I saying about in the trailer here? I said Tom Hardy was this type of role was reminding me of what type of actor? What did I keep saying? Old-time actor that I just mentioned.
Marlon Brando.
I said this is like a Marlon Brando type of role, and it turns out like this is what his character aspires to be. You know, I just thought that was really ironic based on TDI and our conversations. But Austin Butler, let's not glaze him too much. He's a part of this new crop of young, exciting actors. We talked about the James Dean type of feel he had. Ricky Flex, let's talk about it. How goes he in this movie?
This was like just like him putting on the costume, putting on the jacket, and just stand there, just captivate the audience, just by being on screen. That's pretty much it. That's all he had to do in this movie. And to be honest, that's all Jeff Nichols really asked him to do, because every time he was on screen, didn't have a lot to say, not a lot of lines, not a lot of dialogue. And also when he was off the screen, you felt his presence missing, you know? So not a lot. Again, it's not a talkative role, but obviously at his like what is he like 32, 33? Just in this era of his career, perfect for the part. I honestly don't think anyone else right now could have done it as good of a job, just like by looking like a James Dean-esque type of person or a movie star, you know.
Honestly, the guy who could have done it is someone that we don't want to talk about too much, but a couple weeks ago after Hitman, Glenn Powell. Like just to have that type of, he's too blonde for the role, you know.
And he's too funny.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. You know, I guess if you take away, if you look at after Hitman, you might say he's too funny, but I'm just talking about he didn't have to talk in this movie. You might say Glenn Powell is a little too talkative and dialogue heavy in his movies. You know, he doesn't lean on it, but like that's just who he is. Right. Austin Butler, there's something like he was doing a wink to the audience and he knew how cool he looked, you know, and the whole role is just look as cool as possible wearing this jacket and on this motorcycle. You want to be, right, someone that Tom Hardy's character is infatuated with, is obsessed with. Like, I need to be this guy, right? And this guy is destined to lead a motorcycle gang. To have like those scenes, this movie is extremely cinematic with the way they captured Austin Butler specifically. When you are introduced to him and he's got the two arms leaning on the pool table and you see Jodie Comer staring at him going to Jodie Comer and just saying hi, and that's it. And all of a sudden she's riding on a bike home with Austin Butler. You know, it's that type of mythological type of character where it's like you don't believe this person could actually exist. And that's why it's like the minimal dialogue helps, right? And I think that's why when I look at Comer and Hardy, they outdid him in screen time, right? And he is in the middle of this like love triangle that's going on between Hardy, Comer, and Butler. And I think he played it perfectly. It's not the hardest job in the world when you look like Austin Butler does, but did he nail it? Yeah, he actually did. And he didn't have to try as hard as Comer or Hardy did.
That's it. What you just said at the end there. This wasn't a hard role. He just had to walk on set, put on the jacket, and go on the screen. But you got to give him credit. He did it, right?
No, he was good. His arm hanging off the motorcycle, the physical acting in this movie should be appreciated.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I just think like my last time I'll say this, but the story was pretty broad, right? Like very wide ranging, trying to tackle a bunch of things. And like obviously a huge supporting cast, like I mentioned off the top. He like kind of held our attention to the film. He was the center of it. And for him to be out of it so much, I don't know. Like for me, like you needed to give him more screen time and maybe a few more lines. But yeah, for me, that was just like a big, bold choice Jeff Nichols made, even though like he said like himself, like I don't see anyone else that could have done this role, just like I said earlier.
So this movie, the flaw in my eyes is that it's torn in two different directions after the first act. The first act is fun. It kind of reminds me also of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's like transporting you to this era. We're doing it through different shots, different eccentric and like supporting cast members, some great music. But I'm also questioning after the first act, what is the story here? What are we driving at? Which character should we be following? And finally, like we didn't have Jodie Comer and Austin Butler really on screen together for the first like 45 minutes to an hour of this movie. It was kind of just exploring the gang itself. And then all of a sudden we're thrust into Tom Hardy wanting Austin Butler, his character, to become the next leader of the gang as Tom Hardy's character ages. And then Jodie Comer's pulling him in the other direction, saying, I want you out of this bike riding life. I want you out of the Vandals. I want you out of this gang. That's a compelling storyline, but the movie doesn't really stick with it. And instead, it also throws in overall an overarching type of like plot where it's we're going from the golden era of riding motorcycles, right? We're talking about 65 to 73. So it's like this era of Tom Hardy starting the gang, the rise, and also the fall as they initiate new, younger members that are more counterculture. So it became a movie that was, oh, yes, it's about the tearing of Austin Butler into two different directions, but then it's about the rise and fall of the gang. And Jeff Nichols didn't know which way he wanted to pull. He decided to just throw it all in there. And because of that, I just didn't like the movie as much, and it might have been a little bit simpler. Like if you have Austin Butler there, right? He made it a little bit more complex or just wide open, I think, with these two storylines.
Yeah, you said it again. Just the story, like the first act was really good because it just focused on Austin Butler, Jodie Comer, them meeting and becoming a couple, and Tom Hardy, how the gang how he started the gang or the group, and then obviously where they are now. It's kind of setting everything up and also like learning a lot about them throughout. But I would just say that trying to tackle Vietnam, trying to tackle drugs and like the freaking kid who didn't even have a name, he's known as the kid who's trying to take over the gang. You're trying to tackle these other things in the second and third act. It's like you lose your way. And while you're losing, you don't have screen time for the guy where this movie's centered around. And particularly that love triangle where Tom Hardy and Jodie Comer are pulling one arm of Austin Butler. Each are pulling out an arm trying to take him. And you don't have the body there. So it's just kind of odd. Just the way he approached it is just I guess you could just tell like the frustration in my voice. Because like, I don't know. I just feel like this could have been a lot better because it's not like you had a story that you had to rely on. This was a fictional story. It's just like off of photos, and Jeff Nichols created this. He could have done so many other things. And through his past history with movies, he does smaller, not broad stories, very smaller, grounded stories, and that are emotional, sentimental, a lot of like relationship stories. So it's just shocking to me that he did this. It's just kind of a weird. Again, I think he was too focused on the aesthetics. I really do.
Yeah, and it kind of. I do understand it because he's basing this off of photographic book, You know, he's trying to tell a story based on images, and this is it's kind of what he's going off of. And you think about the way the movie shot, setting you like in Chicago at this time, it kind of makes sense. But I also was thinking like you could make like he honestly could have made this a documentary about the Vandals, right? And yeah, like honestly, I think that might have been a better idea. But you have like these actors at your disposal that are willing to join. Right, the movie. There's a lot of history behind this motorcycle gang, and then also Ricky. There are a lot of motorcycle riders in this world. And then this is kind of their movie. And Ricky, I went to see this movie and I walked out at the end and I saw like literal motorcycle riders wearing a bandana on their head.
Really?
They had arm tats. They had Harley Davidson on their chest. They went to go see this movie because of like the history of bike riding. This is people's lives, just like this movie showcased. I think there is a niche like demographic that was like that will love this movie. And it's not only because of like Jeff Nichols just wanting to make the movie, but like the supporting characters, the Boyd Holbrooks that are working on the choppers, the Norman Reedus like type of characters that are gritty, grimy, and all they do is live life on the road. You know, it just feels like it was with these supporting characters. They didn't have a ton of screen time, right? But they all nailed it, to be honest. And like these different type of riders coming together for some type of familiar feeling. You know, the whole movie's like these outsiders that don't have a sense of belonging that were kind of bullied, and then they come together to have that sense of belonging. You know, this did have like a like. Did you have that in your theater? Do you have any bike riders there?
I had one other person in my 9 o'clock Thursday night showing. The guy was probably like 50, just housing popcorn in the row in front of me. That's it. But I like the tracking for this was 8 million at the box office, I think, for the
Oh
weekend.
my God, really?
So
Domestic?
that I think would have been like a low for a nationwide release. For like a like actual like legit nationwide release for a bigger movie, bigger in quotes because it's still not a big movie, with arguably the like two of the top 10 young stars in Hollywood, and then reliable Michael Shannon, reliable Tom Hardy, Norman Reedus of Walking Dead fame. You have a bunch of guys that should command a box office altogether at minimum. And Inside Out 2 saying, no, we're taking your lunch money. Like, we're taking all of it. We're taking your lunch money. We're taking your dinner. Like, you're not going to even have a second opening weekend either because A Quiet Place Day 1. Horizon, that is screwed, by the way. That's also next weekend, but holy crap, that box office is going to be bad. But yeah, no, this is not looking good at the box office. But the niche, that is interesting to hear because I did not get that whatsoever. But it could just be the demographic, too, of the towns that we were in.
Yeah, no, dude, I live around the corner from a biker bar. It's called Jersey Joe's
Point.
in Plainville.
There it is.
Yeah, they have prime rib Tuesdays, you know, and that's where you have literally motorcycles, like literally 50 motorcycles lined up. It's like a ball, it's a motorcycle bar. Like Ricky, honestly, I should do some like investigative like journalism and go and interview and say, did you guys see the bike riders? Because there's a chance like maybe this past weekend they lined up there and then they wanted to go see the bike riders afterwards. This movie had tributes to like bike riders. They talked about the
Yeah.
wild ones, Marlon Brando. You have Easy Rider at the end of this movie, and like Norman Reedus, like obviously promoting the movie at the end. Sorry, it's a little bit of a spoiler, not really. But also Norman Reedus is like Daryl Dixon, it's like iconic fictional motorcycle rider. So like while I say this is like paying homage to like Goodfellas, but it's also just saying like the what we have seen in media for motorcycle riders over the years. Like Jeff Nichols obviously wanted to pay some type of tribute because they are one of the most cinematic type of like vehicles that anyone can ride. You know, it's just something cool about riding motorcycles.
Yeah, dude, I love Sons of Anarchy. I rewatched that show two times, and I was thinking about doing a third. I started season 1 again. God, I want to say a couple months ago, just because I was like, oh, I know it was when this trailer dropped. So whenever that was, I was like, oh, I'm gonna rewatch Sons. Didn't get to past season 1, but someday I will rewatch that again. Love that, and like that Jax Teller aura, Austin Butler does like he has that on the big screen. So what Charlie Hunnam had, Austin Butler has that. You know, obviously different types of gangs, and if you know Sons, you know like it's very different. But that look, the feel, it was all there, and it was like I did not leave the theater saying like, oh, that didn't meet my expectations or anticipation levels. I didn't feel like disappointed because I had a good time watching this movie just because of that feel and like, oh, bike rider movie that also like felt like a bike rider movie properly. I was happy with that.
Even though like the movie we're talking about getting split into two different possible directions, the rise and fall of the crew, then the love triangle with Austin Butler. Like I saw there's not one part of the movie I didn't like it's not like I didn't like seeing the fall of the gang. Honestly, I think one of my favorite supporting performances was Toby Wallace, who plays the kid. And I thought he was really good at the beginning when he first enters the movie, his infatuation with the Vandals, him first meeting Tom Hardy, or maybe the second time he met Tom Hardy, and Tom Hardy asks him, like, okay, you can join the gang, but you have to leave your friends behind. And when Toby Wallace's character says, fine, I'll leave my friends, Tom Hardy rejects him and says, you're going to like betray your friends like that. You're out of the gang. Like, I like those type of scenes. I thought Toby Wallace kind of killed it. I didn't love a decision he made at the end of this movie. That's not really his fault. It's obviously the way the script was written and Jeff Nichols, the direction he took the movie. I thought that was kind of bullshit, honestly. But I thought Toby Wallace is a young, exciting actor there's a long time where he's not in the movie. He's introduced and it's like 40 minutes without him. But
Weird.
I thought he was pretty good.
I thought so. I don't think anyone was bad in this. I think everyone just like quite like Boyd Holbrook. I thought he was gonna be like a more of a hard nosed like bike rider. Instead, he's the
Yeah,
laid
they kind
back
of played
Cali guy.
against type a little bit.
Yeah, like, but I thought he was good. Like, I was just like, did not expect that. I thought Norman Reedus was great. Small role, but perfect. But with Toby Wallace, I thought he was good. But the story, I don't know. I did love that scene with like the friends part because like, again, like Tom Hardy, he's not like trying to make this into a freaking like a gang where you're doing drugs and crime and whatnot, or like you're like in the drug trade or whatnot. Like they're not. He just wants to ride bikes and like drink beers with his friends. So like when that kid says like I'll leave my friends, he goes, well, then that's not the reason why I created this freaking club. Like you can't join my club then. But then this guy ends up freaking running the club by the end, and with not a lot of screen time, it was just kind of, they tried to force a storyline on us when there's already so much else that they're trying to tackle, and while Austin Butler's not in the screen like ever, and he's the center of the movie. So it was just kind of odd decision making again for me.
So it's like I think honestly, it's either you remove that character from the movie, that Toby Wallace guy, and go all in on Austin Butler, right? I think that's what you had to do in order to make it a little more refined. Because I think when you insert him into the movie Toby Wallace and then reintroduce him, I feel like the movie feels longer than an hour 56 minutes. Like I feel like it gets extended a little bit. It feels almost like an epic because the story is so sprawling all over the place. Honestly, my favorite supporting character probably in this movie, Michael Shannon. Michael Shannon was so excellent in this movie.
As always.
He's Jeff Nichols' guy, right? Was like what Midnight Special? Is that Jeff Nichols?
Yes, but God, what's the one that's the Michael Shannon like famous screaming scene? God, Shotgun Stories? No, that's the Jeff Nichols' first movie. Crap, I forget what it is.
I have Michael Shannon's IMDb right here. Oh man,
It was like 2016 maybe movie.
see all. I gotta scroll down. Michael Shannon's in everything, dude. He's in a lot. This is a very small role for Michael Shannon to take on. I think it's because Jeff Nichols is directing.
Right.
Man. I mean, the 2016 is Nocturnal Animals, bro, and he's not screaming in that movie. He has terminal cancer, not Shape of Water.
Is it Midnight Special? Is that what I'm thinking of?
I think it is Midnight Special, dude. That's 2016. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's it. No, Take Shelter. Take Shelter. 2011. Yeah, it's like a family. That's a really sad movie. He's like going through like a mind. There's a famous scene, like a very famous scene of him just going absolutely apeshit around people. I highly recommend it. It goes on. It's like surfaces on Twitter like once every couple months. Highly recommend just quick Michael Shannon Take Shelter scene. You'll know which one.
Like funny, random Michael Shannon, great supporting role here. Boyd Holbrook, I just wanted to say, like, he's great on a motorcycle in Logan, and he's also on a motorcycle again in Indiana Jones 5. Like, this guy likes there's a cinematic quality to him on a motorcycle. This one, he takes off the edge a little bit, like California Kid joining the Chicago Vandals. And it's a little bit of a surprise, but honestly doesn't get a ton of screen time. But he's the guy who's underneath the hood of every bike and just knows how they operate. I think that Bikeriders really appreciated that. Yeah, that's who I had for my favorite performances. And it's hard to distribute any type of screen time to them because you got three major stars kind of duking it out between Comer, Hardy, and Butler. Do you have any
Mm.
other comments on the performances here?
No, I would just say, like, taking a look ahead, like, I know we haven't done the checkup in a while, but like we don't love talking about the resume, but also what's coming up, right? Like Boyd Holbrook, he's going to be Johnny Cash in the James Mangold
That's
Timothy
awesome.
Chalamet movie. So
Let's
like
go.
that's
He's
a
too good
big
looking
one.
for that. Johnny Cash is like an ugly dude. Like Boyd Holbrook can't play Johnny Cash.
I think you're right, but it's happening. So he continues that relationship there.
Michael
With
Shannon
Comer,
can play Johnny Cash.
dude, wasn't he Elvis? Elvis, what was that movie?
Elvis, not is it not it's Elvis Nixon.
Elvis Nixon. Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, weird. But then Jodie Comer, obviously 28 years later, with that huge cast. So she's got that coming up. Austin Butler, we'll see about Heat 2. That's still a rumor. But he's got the Ari Aster movie with Emma Stone, Joaquin Phoenix, and Pedro Pascal. So he's got that. He's got the Darren Aronofsky movie coming up too. So he has some exciting projects coming up. And then you freaking have Tom Hardy, who with this, and then you get past Venom at the end of this year, he's kind of back. He's like, he has this. He's going to have that detective movie Havoc. He's doing an Andrew Dominic Navy SEALs movie. And then he's doing the movie with Mahershala Ali. So he's kind of getting back into this groove, which we love to see. Jake Gyllenhaal takes some notes. So I think this whole cast is just very exciting now. This movie might not do great at the box office, but we have some work here, potential here for some good work down the line in near term.
This Havoc movie must have already been shot. That's also being directed,
Yes.
I believe, by Gareth Edwards that did that movie. We
Love
might have
that.
to double check that, but I'm pretty sure that Gareth Edwards is directing Havoc. I don't like how, I mean, Tom Hardy, what I've learned about him, he kind of just does whatever he wants. He kind of goes to the beat of his own drum. And like with Venom, he could have easily called it quits after the first movie or end that trilogy anytime he wants. Like he's writing those movies, he's starring in those movies, he's having a lot of fun with those movies. And now he's doing that Navy SEAL movie you're talking about. He's going all in on like some action movies, even after Venom, even at an elderly age. He's still doing a movie like this, a prestige type of project with exciting young actors, right? Alongside Jeff Nichols, it just seems like Tom Hardy kind of does what he wants, and he seems like he will continue to do so. And if the Oscar noms come one day, hopefully, if not, it's not going to bother Tom Hardy, so it shouldn't bother anybody else. Great conversation, Ricky Flicks. Scores for the Bikeriders.
This is a tough one. I'll go 72.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot lower than expected. Ricky Flicks twice. You were low on Inside Out 2. Now you're low on the Bikeriders. The content carousel, movie-wise, I think is letting you down a little bit, Ricky.
Yeah, a little bit. But, hey, the box office is doing well. The Bears this week. And the boys is still rolling.
The boys are still rolling. 77 out of 100 for the Bikeriders with Dr. O. That does it for our review.